My name is Chris Bulezuik, and I'm a hair and beauty photographer. I wouldn't necessarily say that I always wanted to be a photographer, but I think I always knew that I wanted to create. As a child, I was labelled artistically gifted. My teenage years were very difficult. I lost my mum when I was 14, and it had a profound impact on me. I wouldn't say I became troublesome, but my academic performance most definitely collapsed. And like many creatives, I failed by traditional measures. Creativity isn't about how many paragraphs you can read before losing interest. It's about absorbing information differently. It's about solving problems in unique ways and being able to see the big picture. So for me, art became my outlet for grief and my way of processing the world. And I particularly love ceramics, and I did a GCSE and also an A-level in that. And part of the course involved documenting your process. And I also wanted to capture some references of stone texture as part of my work. And it was at that point when I first picked up a camera. So I joined the school photography club and learned how to use a camera, and I learned how to process my films, and I learned how to develop. In my late 20s, I went to Central St Martin's as a mature student and studied there. But it wasn't until about a decade ago where I decided that I really wanted to give it a proper go. I opened my own studio in Brighton. Like most of us, spent the first couple of years testing, and what I loved was portraiture. And then a lady who ran a PR agency who specialised in hair actually hired my studio. And I was doing my portfolio at the time, and she looked at my work and she said, "Is that yours?" And I said, yeah, it is. And she said, "I can get you lots of work in hair if you want it." Of course, I said, yeah, sounds great. I mean, like any photographer, if someone dangles the carrot of potential work in front of you, you're going to take that with both hands. And I didn't think anything of it. But then about 2 weeks later, she called me and said that she wanted me to shoot the live looks for an event in Manchester called Pro Hair Live. I found myself at this event capturing the most incredible avant-garde creations. I mean, it was like a complete revelation for me. And I discovered this whole community, what I would call true creatives whose medium just happens to be hair. And collaborating with them just lit a spark in me, and I was completely hooked. When photographing hair, of course, there are technical rules that you pick up over time. So you learn which lighting setups are going to flatter particular textures or colors, and which ones are going to kill the detail and burn them out. But for me, that technical knowledge is important, but in my view, it isn't the most important skill. Because I think the real skill, and I think this is true of all genres of photography, is collaboration. So working with clients, understanding what they actually want from the shoot. This all comes from my early career in advertising. So in my 20s and 30s, this is where I learned how to communicate, how to interpret briefs and translate them into a creative treatment. And that stayed with me in my journey as a photographer. Because hairdressing is such a unique industry. And when you work with hairdressers and brands over time, you begin to really understand what matters to them. And that trust is everything. I've had clients who have tried working with fashion photographers, for example, and the results are always beautiful images, but the hair is often lost. And for the hairdresser, that of course defeats the whole point. But that's why I always make pre-shoot collaboration a priority. I'll always ask clients to send me references, not to copy them, but to get a feel for the mood and the vibe that's in their heads. That gives me the foundation to bring my own lighting and technical skills and creativity to elevate that work. That ability to interpret, collaborate, and deliver consistently is why I've become known as one of the top hair photographers in the country. I consider myself very lucky because I work across such a broad mix of clients, from independent salons and session stylists, salon groups, and also global brands. I think every shoot gives me the chance to be creative, because I think as creatives, if we don't have any input, then we're going to lose that emotional attachment to the work. It's the emotional attachment that makes us proud of it. It's easy to assume that commercial work stifles creativity, and in truth, I find it does the opposite. I'm asked by up-and-coming photographers, how do they get ahead? And I'll say to them that the client hasn't booked you simply because you know how to set up lighting or how a camera works. They book you because of how you compose and your instinct for that millisecond in time that you choose to press the shutter and capture that image. So some of the most creative projects I've done have been with smaller, independent clients. They often look to me for guidance and allow me the freedom to interpret their vision. One of my favorite examples was when I was working with a stylist who had actually never shot her own collection before. She wanted to create this avant-garde hair collection. As soon as she shared her ideas with me, I knew exactly how I was going to shoot it. But I also knew how I was going to do it in a way that was really bold, but still accessible for her, because of course, her cost and her budget was a factor. Now that shoot ended up winning her Avant-Garde Hairdresser of the Year at the British Hairdressing Awards. And I'll never forget this. When she stood up on stage at the British Hairdressing Awards and accepted her trophy, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "We did it, Chris!" in front of an audience of 4,000 people. I mean, that was just pure validation for me, and that's why I love what I do. So I think where I'm at now is I'm at the perfect spot with the clients that I work with, that every shoot that I'm part of gives me the opportunity to input creatively. I mentor for the Fellowship of British Hairdressing. One of the first things I teach is the importance of understanding the purpose of a shoot. You need to define your vision before you even think about briefing a team and booking a photographer. So once that purpose is clear, it's about building the right team around you. A lot of my independent clients, they suddenly find themselves thrust into the role of a creative director when they're organising a shoot, where they feel that they need to have opinions on fashion and makeup and everything else that goes into it. But of course, they're not creative directors, they're hairdressers. And that's their craft. But of course, this is where I can step in and I can coach them to use the experience and the perspectives of the whole team, whether that's makeup artists, stylists, or myself, to help shape that creative direction. Very often, these discussions unlock new ideas and unexpected ways of actually approaching the shoot. Of course, I also bring my own ideas and my influences. As a photographer, I'm completely consumed by the medium, and I'm also inspired by other forms of art and photography, and always thinking about how I can try new techniques or push boundaries. But that real magic is when you're in the studio and the images are coming up on screen and the client and I lock eyes and we say in unison, "We've got it." That's the high, right? That's the high we live for as creatives, that shared moment when all of the planning and all of the collaboration is paid off.